World War II terrible event, echoes of which are still felt all over the world, and the idea of going back to time and deal with Hitler even shows blockbusters. But what if it happened anyway? There was a world without a main offender. The tranquility of the last century is us. We will show you now, and you join us in the comments with our own versions. Let's start with the fact that she herself, Hitler's entry into politics, is pure accident, and it's not even about what's in elementary school. He diligently studied singing in choir and was an assistant to the priest and not in. The fact that he wrote poetry, composed a libretto for the Wagner opera, and survived the hardest lung disease in youth. Any of these factors was enough to make the life of a future tyrant turned in a different direction or not at all. Interrupted. The speech is not about them in the first turn. Talk about the river Inna, on which, in 1884, 5-year-old Adolf fell into. Icy water miraculously saved him passing past the boy who did not suspect. Why everything will lead. And then there was the first world. Hitler passed it entirely in 1915. He was wounded by a grenade, and in 1918 she lost her sight after being poisoned gas. And that's not all. Henry Tendy, British soldier about to kill Hitler on the battlefield, but at the last moment changed his mind when he saw that he was injured. Then there was a suicide attempt, and even the trial following which Hitler was miraculously not sentenced to death. Treasury, and even the coming of a tyrant to power, accompanied by millions of accidents in. Even Stalin is blamed for him, who allegedly did not allow the communists to support Hitler's rivals to win. Scientists compare the probability of coming Adolf to power with the emergence of life on the ground. Too many accidents brought, but let's say at one of the stages, Hitler disappeared. For example, his stammered the crowd after the performance in Munich. To understand what would happen to the world in the first thing to look at Germany, late 20s, early 30s of the last century, and we will see the humiliated defeat in the First World War. A country with great ambitions, offensive detail, transfer of land from native Germans of Czechoslovakia. It is important to understand that offended all residents felt. Maine and such Austrians, regardless of one in gender, rebelled. Not only the Germans, but also Slavs and even Jews who are full citizens. Second factor, Industrial Revolution defeat in World War I pushed the Germans back, but in the economic miracle, Hitler is not particularly participated. Its foundations were laid yet. In the 20s, as early as 1927, Germany produced 22% more production than in 1913. This in all Americans helped equally. Credits USSR recognition and Europe. Hitler received a real power only in 1933, and at that time, Germany was already far from being a weakling. But in our history of Hitler there is no who then. It doesn't really matter exactly to say that the Nazis would not have received such power. Fascism and Nazism is far from German invention. At the root of movements are rooted in the First World and angry beacons. It seemed to everyone that they spilling blood on the battlefield just like that, and in one form or another Nazism spread throughout Europe. The same Mussolini dividing the views of Hitler, rules of Italy since 1922 in this or that. A different kind of nationalist fascists were everywhere in England and France and even in the USSR, but in the vast majority of countries in me, managed to climb to the top of power without charismatic Hitler would have happened. And in Germany, Adolf's personality is contradictory, but with no one can argue he was great speaker. So in the beginning, 30s Nazis in power would definitely not. It turned out the truth is not the fact that it is would cancel the war in the first place, as we already Germans said they felt humiliated while the economy grew, and any ruler or party in power in any case aim returned from equestrian German lands. And here we remember the worst crime in human history, Holocaust. They say that Hitler suspected a Jewish doctor of poisoning mother anyway. It was he who was behind the most insane genocide in history. None of his rivals and potential replacements didn't want this. What does it mean for our alternate history branch, science? Because in Germany began 30s, Jews were the driving force. Physics and other important areas. All modern scientists unanimously say that then the Germans were the first scientific power of the world. We hope not, for it's no secret that the main link, the creation of the atomic bomb and space missiles in the USSR and especially in the USA, were German migrant refugees. Edward Teller, Jewish inventor of the hydrogen bomb, escaped in 1935 to the United States of America, and Lord and Eugene Wigner, other refugees, together with the Teller, wrote a letter about the need for nuclear weapons. Roosevelt, well, about Einstein, for whose head appointed 50,000 marks, and achievements attributed to Aryan scientists generally silent. Meanwhile, Albert was a patriot and loved Germany. Open any list. Inventors of atomic bombs and missiles in it. There will be an overwhelming majority of German refugee scholars. Now imagine that. None of them left their homeland and worked for the good of Germany. Manhattan Project that led to the emergence of atomic bombs in the United States would be sold in Germany. Years for 510 before the progress of industry continued despite racial Hitler's purges, and without them his results would be many times higher, even taking into account runaway minds remained fearful that the Nazis will atomic bomb until the end. War without Hitler. She would have appeared in 30s, and did someone turn? Would language say something against the Germans, who would politely ask, review the results of the First World War and give them back the land 1,000 times? Repeat this. Was the desire of all offended by fate? Germans, and not just Hitler. He already did it in 1938, and it is doubtful that one of the successors did not try achieve the same peacefully. On this moment it is also important to evaluate geopolitical situation in the world. The same British and American Stalin was not the best Hitler, but cross out the last one. The axis of claims would be only the USSR. What? There is a decision to enter the Second World and to declare war on Hitler in the United States was not too popular to kill both Adolf and replace it with a ruler that is not arranges racial cleansing and blacks. This is an empire for the whole world, and the conclusion will be is obvious. We do not raise it to the absolute, because politics is politics and strong. Germany would also cause claims from world community, and in this light, theories proposed by Stephen Fry looks realistic. In 1996, his novel, he came to the conclusion that everything could be worse if instead of impulsive, racist Hitler in power was someone cold-blooded and rational consequences. We could be terrifying. Not really. We share this theory. It's not a fact that hypothetical changer would like war, but the trouble is that not only Hitler as a whole wanted to fight Japan, USSR, Britain, and USA also warmed up before the meat grinder in late 30s. Hitler's role as the instigator of the terrible massacre in history key, but it's not the individuals that make history. The situation in the world gives rise to personality, and a bunch of documents and investigations about that the USSR wanted to attack Germany, and Britain did not know at all until the last. With whom to fight is the only example. What can be said for sure without the Holocaust and genocide of their own population by the Germans approached the conflict much stronger, and conditions following the results of World War I arranged not only them sooner or later. The mighty of this world would still have to fight. What kind of war would be the existence of conjecture? With a certain degree of certainty, argue only that the losses in it are more likely. Everything would be less because, as we already mentioned, nuclear weapons would appear in Germany much earlier, and her potential rivals' desire to fight could have gone much earlier. The rest is driving with a pitchfork on the water, like dumping all sins on the head of one. Just Hitler. Look at the world around. Now, did the presidents stop? Are measured in clubs and arrange wars in which they die simple hard workers? No. And until people realize what to let each other to barbecue for imaginary facts of racial, territorial, and other superiority is meaningless, the world is better not will become. Unfortunately, in our time, history is not get lost in the popularity of sports night. It is not known how much humanity needs lessons like Hitler to change. See you soon, friends.